More people join. All right, hey everybody. Welcome to Building Warehouse Native SaaS with Embedded Data Import and Export. We are waiting for a couple more people to join into the webinar before we get going. But yes, that is exactly what I wanted to talk about. Lewis actually found the public chat. Go ahead and look at chat. Type in where you're coming from today. Where in the world are you? I am calling in from New York City. So I'll go ahead and do that. Nice. One thing I never really quite understood, and it just gets more and more confusing, is when people say, I'm from the Bay Area. I'm like, it's huge. It's a huge geographic area.
Yeah. I mean, nobody knows where Walnut Creek is, I think, for the most part. So but they know where the Bay Area is.
Yes, absolutely. We have Chris from Middle of Nowhere, PA. Fun fact, I'm also from Pennsylvania, and I actually had to spell it today, and I was so unconfident that I Googled it, despite having spelled it for the first 20 years of my life, every day.
Too many letters.
All right, let's kick off. So welcome everybody who is on the line, all our viewers, our esteemed speakers, to Building Warehouse Native SaaS with Embedded Data Import and Export. What we're here to talk about is a rising trend in SaaS of being super connected to the data warehouse, both importing data in, building data products, and then exporting that data out. And quite a lot of people are talking about it, but few people are nearly as advanced far down the path as Untitled. And so I'm really excited to introduce some of our speakers today who are going to be talking about that journey. And actually, Census and Fivetran were a small part of that journey, but we're really excited to have Aaron walk through why they took this approach, the benefits that they're seeing in taking this approach, and cool things that they're able to do. So getting us started here, our agenda for the session is we're going to do a quick round of intros of our speakers, talk about what Powered by Fivetran and Census Embedded are. Then we have the meat of our session today, which is talking about how Untitled drives value with embedded data integrations, both import and export. And then we're going to have a demo walkthrough of the Untitled platform and how this all comes together. Before we jump into the intros, I'm just the MC here. I'm Jeff. I'm going to fade into the background for most of this presentation, but definitely do post any questions that you have in the chat. I see quite a lot of people have already made their way to the chat already. We're going to be flexible throughout this and actually pull some questions in the middle of the chat itself, or in the middle of the session itself. And then if there's something that seems like it's not quite in the flow, we'll save that for the end. But definitely do ask questions and converse in the chat. So without further ado, let's introduce our speakers. I'll let them introduce themselves, starting with Jimmy.
Hey everyone, I'm Jimmy Hooker. I'm the product manager over here for Powered by Fivetran.
Hi y'all, I'm Will. I'm a product manager at Census, been working on Census Embedded for the last year or so.
Hello everyone, Aaron Peabody. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Untitled.
And amazing. Before we jump into how Untitled is using these two products of Census Embedded and Powered by Fivetran, what are these things? We're going to pass it off to Jimmy to speak a little bit about Powered by Fivetran.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. So yeah, the Powered by Fivetran is really the easiest way to get customer data into your application. So what does that mean? Well, just like if you needed financial information in your application, you'd head over to Plaid. We solve the same problem for all your other data needs. So Fivetran has over 400 connectors that you can programmatically build into your application via our fully featured REST API. Not only that, but with embedded UI, you can securely capture customer credentials without writing any code. So we allow you to pop up UI, capture credentials, and move on without any effort on your part. No one really wants to build data pipelines. No one. They break all the time, and they are a hassle to maintain. The whole reason Fivetran exists is to solve this issue for its customers. Originally, we saw a ton of opportunity purely with data teams, but soon realized that developers need really the exact same tooling for their apps, for data-oriented apps. All this makes it so that you can focus on writing your app and generating business value instead of building these data pipelines and keeping up with breaking changes. And now you can combine the features of Powered by Fivetran with Census Embedded to build full end-to-end data pipelines that solve for truly sophisticated customer needs. We have customers that have scaled to thousands of connections and rely on us for their production workloads. And I'm excited for you all to join them. And with that, I'll pass it off to Will.
All right, thank you, Jimmy. So Powered by Fivetran actually predated Census Embedded by a few years, and so honestly, the intro that Jimmy gave is pretty similar to Powered by Fivetran, right? So for those that aren't familiar with Census, Census is a reverse ETL product. What that means is we allow you to activate the data that exists inside of your warehouse, right? Think data is in your database and you want it in that business application. That's what we started with, right? And so we were empowering non-technical people to build these pipelines and help run their business. And what we discovered is that people wanted to offer this kind of capability inside of their applications. And so very much we have a similar concept where you obviously get access to our API. You can embed an authorization flow inside of your application called Census Connect. Aaron will walk through that later. I'll get a bit of a live demo. We're adding the ability to embed sync editing into your application as well. The reason for this is that in an ETL setup, you really just need to pull in the data, and Fivetran can be opinionated about the shape of the data that comes in. But if you're offering reverse ETL in your product, you want to give that flexibility to your customers for them to be able to customize how do they want the data pushed into their product, their business application that they own. We've also been making it easier and easier for people to get started with Census Embedded. And so we have a custom branded UI. So if somebody doesn't want to build any deep API level integration, they can just kind of spin up a white label version of our product and offer that directly to their customers. And then the last thing I'll highlight is we also have a bunch of connector like business app integrations. So you can push data into Salesforce and Facebook, etc. But we are in an interesting space with Census Embedded in that people sometimes buy Census Embedded for the data source connectors, right? So we connect to not only Snowflake and Redshift, but a bunch of other databases. And in what we're seeing is a bunch of interesting use cases come up. So on the next slide, I'll highlight the fact that there are some companies that are data providers, right? So they have an interesting data set that they sell to their customers. And those customers buy that data and then need to do something with it. And historically, the state of the art was, well, I guess here's a CSV file or a Snowflake data share and good luck. But those people that put all the onus on the customers to then do something with that data, write a custom script or something like that. And so data providers are really excited for Census Embedded because now they actually get their data directly into their customers' applications within minutes. Right after the contract is signed, the data is in Salesforce available for them. SaaS platforms are using the inverse, right? So SaaS platforms have their customers' data put in. Sorry, they're putting their customers' data inside of their application, right? So imagine an application that needs access to its customer data, but that customer's data is inside of their warehouse. Now they can actually build a native warehouse connector and make their product warehouse native. And so people are using Census Embedded for that. And lastly, we have agencies that are like, the state of the art for them has been telling their customers, okay, now download a CSV file of this audience that I built and upload it to this, advertising platform. And so now Census Embedded is helping them. And I'll just lastly highlight like all those different things, all those different features. What we've realized is with Census Embedded, because of the different personas, we need to offer really different deployment methods. So some people get started up in like a day, where they're like, I just want to use Census, and let me use it on behalf of my customers, and I'll just like do data activation for them. On the other end of the spectrum, we have people that are doing bespoke API level integrations. They're building components inside of their app. And in the middle, we have this custom branded UI that I talked about, right? So basically a white labeled Census. And we're developing the embeddable UI components that makes it really easy to build reverse ETL into people's product. And across the top there, you can see that like that Census Connect, that authorization flow is available for everybody and is used by most Census Embedded customers. That's definitely the constant. All right, I'll pass it off to Aaron to see what this actually looks like in practice. Oh, Aaron, you're on mute.
Okay, so just a little bit of background on us. So Untitled was founded October 1st, 2018. We really specialize and have core capabilities in building software and AI solutions tailored for data-intensive marketing and advertising use cases. So that's what we're known for. Historically, we're a services business, absolutely doing that, building bespoke stacks, and then subsequently kind of saw the same use case over and over again. And so we bolted that into a product called Distilled, which is a distillation of all the work that we've done historically. So there's kind of like a pun and double layer of irony there. But really what Distilled is it's a CDP out of the box. And so we close gaps around data onboarding, enrichment, modeling, and then ultimately building audiences to activate those to various advertising platforms as well as our own DSP. So the primary problems that we're solving for people is first and foremost, if you're in the marketing industry, you know that cookies are going to be deprecated Q3 24. And what that means is the identity backbone for the internet, since the first programmatic display ads were served, is going away. And so the solution to that problem is first-party data. And the problem with first-party data by default is that it has some limitations in terms of the amount of it that any given company will have, as well as the richness of the attributes that you need in order to have good audience fill rates and match rates within these advertising ecosystems. Media buying is also getting more complex just in general. And historically, the buyer themselves has been pushed further and further away from the source of where that media is. And so it requires more technology, sophistication, et cetera, ultimately to serve ads as well as serve ads successfully. And then lastly, given the identity problems mentioned in the first 2 points, this makes the whole attribution loop pretty hard to actually triangulate and yet alone know if like $1 I'm spending on marketing is going to produce $1 or more in revenue. But furthermore, how I associate that to my own customer data. And so really, we kind of think of advertising platforms almost as a black box. So you have all of these tools and systems that you use every day to run your business, and it's where all of your data lives. And should you want to activate that first-party data, which you'll need to start doing soon with cookies going away, that lives in these other systems that have different digital identifiers that you would need to target those folks one-to-one and actually have attribution to do that. But that connectivity is partitioned, and ultimately there's not a lot of ways to know if you're connecting truly with a member of your CRM in the advertising platform. And so Distilled is really a solution that allows you to bring in all of this first-party data from these different locations, enrich that with both our second-party and third-party data sets, And really that centers entirely around what is the audience in our system. And so audiences are, to some extent use cases, and how you would choose to reach out to these people, or why you would choose to reach out to them. And so something like an ICP generator model in Distilled, we onboard someone's Shopify data. We look for patterns and trends of their highest LTV customers. And then in both second and third party data sets, we match that up. And then subsequently roll up audiences that they can dynamically target in advertising and emailing systems. The problem, at least historically, if we go into what Distilled does, is that this section over on the right side, destinations, was a little bit cumbersome on our users. And so we had all of this, robustness in terms of bringing data on, our identity resolution processes, enrichment models, et cetera. But at the end of the day, that largely ended with being able to download it as a CSV, being able to get to that data through like an S3 share, or being able to connect to it through this Athena connector, which works great for offering a SQL solution to users who are familiar with that, but subsequently kind of clunky for most. So we kind of had to solve that problem. So kind of abstracting up what the platform fundamentally does, just to make it easy, is we think of everything as inputs, our customers doing stuff with data, and outputs. For inputs, we've been a Powered by Fivetran customer for a long time. And we're actually one of the first that signed up for it. And then also our Distilled LDS tag, which allows people to bring in user level data from their website. Doing stuff with data is all the actual audience building and the models that create different types of audiences, and the reporting to consolidate media spend analytics and advertising data in one place. And then outputs, thankfully now, due to Census Embedded, is a way for our users to self-authorize into their marketing and ad sources, of which we're usually already bringing in through Fivetran, and subsequently push this modeled, enriched data back into the place that we got it from. And so coming back here, if you think about our customers, most are e-com, so selling direct to consumer, or digital first agencies, or selling B2B SaaS. But we're not working with data engineering types, right? Or data analysts usually. We're working with VPs of marketing, marketing teams, ad operations teams. And so like the CSV example for, say, an e-com customer, they're going to have to come in, download this data daily. And then by the time that they get it formatted how they want, and they're uploading it into the system where they're going to serve ads to it, that process could take 15, 20 minutes. And for one person, maybe that works. Higher volume sites could take a little bit longer. But for our agencies, that is an untenable task. They have 100 customers using our product. You're talking about a full-time job that we're asking them to do to use our product. But now that is programmatic, and we can thank Census for that. So just a little bit of walkthrough of what this looks like, because I think a lot of people that are interested in signing up for solutions like PBF and Census want to know like what an example of this actually looks like in someone else's product. And so for us, logging into Distilled, down on the data management side, you have sources and destinations. So this is Powered by Fivetran for one side and Census for the other. For Powered by Fivetran, we use their Connect cards. We don't get fancy with it. Our customers know or are aware that they're installing Fivetran apps. You can definitely bring this up a few levels if you want an abstraction through the PBF headless offerings. At the same time, the most important thing to us is just getting data in. And that's what's important to our customers as well. So we stuck with Connect cards. So when someone goes to connect, they get a Connect card link. And then, at least in the Klaviyo example, you need an API key. Kind of nice. It comes with some documentation in the card that walks the users through where to fetch that. So that's documentation that Untitled doesn't need to write. Thank you, Fivetran. And then ultimately, once they've connected it, it is now onboarded, syncing. If we go to Census, very similar process. So for what it's worth, we started implementing Census on March 1st. And in about a week and a half, had the framework itself implemented inside of Distilled. And then subsequently in the following week, started supporting 2 destinations for our customers, our most requested, Google Sheets and Klaviyo. In the past week, we just started supporting HubSpot as well. And for us, the reason why there's a little bit of time involved for adding new destinations is because a lot of folks in the marketing side want to hit the easy button. We're trying to build out and template everything that's involved in the process. So we do a little bit of legwork to save folks time. So going back to a point that Will made earlier, some people want a lot of control over how that data ultimately moves into their system. Some folks just want to make sure that you're not going to overwrite their records, or there's rules in place, or there's documentation on how our workflow works so that they don't do that. But not bad to be able to get to a full activation offering inside of Distilled in a matter of 3 weeks from actually starting up. And so I will say of both systems, Fivetran and Census, there's a lot of robust tooling around each of them, as well as teams that are willing to jump in and help. We have a shared Slack channel with both groups, and whenever we have a problem, we're 10 minutes away from getting an answer, which is really, really nice. So this is the other side of Census Embedded. So, a user would come to our audience library and then ultimately, roll up an audience from the data set. They would set up their sync after they've authorized Klaviyo to be connected, name it, and then you can see the key mappings that we're using, so how we're actually loading and what data we're loading into that system. And then we give them little status indicators so that they can see what's going on. It's going to do a check, syncing, or if there's an error, which could happen for a couple different reasons, we're letting the user know that they're going to need to try again. Pretty soon, as in my engineering team might kill me, but maybe within a week, this whole process will be entirely event driven. So that means as soon as Fivetran syncs are finished running, our enrichment jobs automatically kick off. And then as soon as those are complete, audiences are refreshed, and then they are loaded in Klaviyo. So going back to those user stories, folks that it might take 30 minutes and messing around with CSVs ultimately to get a campaign going, this can happen programmatically in the background. They never even need to log into our system, which is awesome. And so I'm going to hold there for a second, just in case there's any questions. I haven't seen any pop up, but Jeff maybe knows differently. And then I can jump into just a little bit more of the UI so you can see what that looks like. Nothing? No questions? Okay. All right. So let's take a look at this. And let's see if it initializes. Jeff, I might need your assistance in terms of getting this loaded onto the main page. Or will
let me know when you are sharing.
Attempting to share. Oh, there we go. I see it.
Perfect.
Awesome.
I just clicked on a bunch of stuff. I think one of them.
One of these buttons got to work. Okay, cool. So basically, when someone logs in, this is a demo account we built earlier today. But essentially, there's both tags, sources, destinations, as I mentioned earlier. So it gives some people some, aggregated summary data around the second party and first party data that's been mashed together. I'm going to go jump over the audience library. So I already have a preset audience saved. Untitled has a new product coming out, native DSP inside of Distilled. And so we created a landing page for that, and then authorized our HubSpot account, as well as this enrichment data feed. So that's rolling up into this B2C audience. Down here, I'll go over to sources really quick. You can see that Fivetran is connected. If they want to connect a different source, it's all available in this library. So this is all powered by Fivetran stuff. On the destination side, a little bit simpler. Again, only been running with this for a couple weeks, but at the same time, this is going to get a lot more robust, similar to our sources library. But this is where Census lives. So coming back to the audience side, going to the B2C audience, I can see that I have my little Google Sheets destination connected. Roll into this. I can see when this audience was last refreshed. So that was earlier today. I've got 68 people in it. I've got Google Sheets connected. And then subsequently tried to preload all of this, but I synced it earlier. But just for what it's worth, this is data that has been loaded from Census directly from Distilled, all programmatically, which is pretty cool. Again, to have this all available for our customers in a matter of weeks does speak to the power and robustness of these tools. And so Untitled, when we looked at both Fivetran way back when, as well as in terms of our newfound partnership with Census, we always look for systems that will give us a ton of leverage out of the gate, because we're a smaller team. And so we want to make sure that we're focusing our attention on the things that we do best. And so fundamentally, our team would get spread very thin trying to support all the integrations that our customers are asking for us. So with us, the driving intent behind using these systems is to, build versus buy. We want to buy so that ultimately we can have a lot of robustness on data in and data out within our system in weeks, not months, or in some cases, probably years. But that is that. I'm going to head back to the deck and we can take any questions.
There was an excellent question that came in. Actually, just first off, huge thanks to our speakers for walking through that and actually showing what this could look like in practice, both the use of Powered by Fivetran and Census Embedded. One question that came in, I think, is really interesting around security. And I'll actually pull this up onto the stream right here. It's not a necessarily a technical question, but I think this speaks to something important that anybody thinking about embedding integrations or doing integration work within their product would care about. Is just what response did you get from your customers, Aaron, around whether accessing their systems and importing their data or exporting that data into their systems from a security standpoint?
Yeah, no, that is a good question. So I'd say it falls into two categories, or at least two drivers, right? So for starters, generally speaking, the marketing, revenue, sales personas, depending on the size of the company, are going to care about that a lot more or not as much. I would say in both scenarios, one thing that's benefited us is Fivetran and Census are larger companies. And subsequently, they have a lot of good documentation, proven systems, and specifications around the security side of things that I think are really important. The other piece that is kind of unknown for a lot of our customers, but when they learn, I think they see the benefit, is that Distilled, whenever someone creates an account, it's actually spinning up an entirely new AWS account. So we are isolated tenant SaaS in that we use AWS organizations as our deployment method. So there's no commingling of customer data within our systems. It's fully partitioned. So for smaller companies like sub 20 million, maybe that's not as important. But for larger companies that we work with, that is a large a driving differentiator for us, something they really appreciate. And I think when they see logos like Fivetran and Census, because we haven't abstracted up our authentication experiences, the transparency of that goes a long way. And I think people really appreciate that.
I'm curious, actually, Aaron. First off, thanks, Chris, for that great question, and thanks for answering that, Aaron, in such detail. But I'm curious, you walked through the interface, and you made choices around which data sets to bring in and which destinations to push to. How do you prioritize which data sources and which destinations you end up working with?
So we do have somewhat of a quantifiable product management process around that. Really, when you look at, for example, in e-com, there's a lot of density around which sources they use. So like 65% or something of direct to consumer businesses under 50 million are on Shopify. And I think of that, more than 50% of them are using Klaviyo. So those two, if we want to serve e-com, that is a must, right? I would say the variability within direct to consumer businesses is much smaller in terms of the tooling they're using. And also, what's nice is there's like a lot of community aspect around those systems as well. B2B is different. There's a lot of different CRM options out there. Salesforce is a beast. HubSpot's a beast. That we just have to go with, priority order based upon both prospect and existing customer request. What's great is that in terms of I'd say maybe 80 to 85% of the request volume around our sources or supported sources kind of falls into maybe 10. And then the rest will tend to be a little bit more fringe. And so the only other thing that we're kind of focused on bringing to life here soon is using the webhook capabilities as well, just so that people can go wherever they want. And that was also a little bit of the idea behind getting Google Sheets out early too. Because once some of that data is in Google Sheets, it can go anywhere, whether using some other webhook system or whatnot, pretty common connector. But we wanted to be able to open up that capability.
And that makes a lot of sense. Another kind of product question, I think, around not just the prioritization, but also kind of the user experience here. How did you right there in the top, kind of in the nav bar, you have sources and you have destinations. It's quite forward in the product. I think I've seen quite a wide variety of SaaS applications. Some bury their integrations section. Some, in our case, we obviously put it front and center because we at Census we're an integration product, so that's very, very important. I guess how did you transit that decision around where to actually put the experience?
Yeah, well, we have some really great designers and product management here. And so in my opinion, this nav is way better than I could have ever dreamed up myself. But more importantly, I think it's where does the work happen, right? And so going back to that really abstracted version of what Distilled does, inputs, do stuff with data, and outputs. Inputs and outputs, I think, are a relatively straightforward experience that if we're doing a good job, hopefully is not somewhere they need to spend a ton of time. But rather it's something that they do once and they connect all their major sources and maybe a little bit more ad hoc as they go about connecting additional ones. But for the most part, we wanted to keep their attention on the thing that our system really is functionally doing for them, which is creating these high value enriched audiences from their first party data and third party data. And I think our nav will get a little bit more robust over time as we expose more functionality, say within the, what we can really offer with Census, people doing their own mapping, stuff like that. This might need to change. But for now, this works, and we're trying to keep it simple for the sake of speed and getting more destinations out.
Gotcha. I'm asking a lot of things around the tech.
Mm-hmm.
And so if anybody has any hardcore technical questions in the audience, or actually from the PM side, I think that would be really interesting. But one more question for you here, Aaron, which is, what is the experience of introducing these integrations to your customers been like, both from a adoption standpoint, or do you have any tips for folks who are thinking about going down this path of introducing integrations to their customers? I think everything from the product side to the customer success side, I think would be really interesting for folks to know.
Yeah. So I'll start with the Fivetran side. We used to have the entire Fivetran library in our system. And this actually caused a lot more problems than it solved. And so what we found was like, okay, wherever we're investing in functionality around specific sources, that needs to be way up high. And also we probably, even though we appreciate the entire integration catalog that's available, probably don't want to have it all there, but rather building our own categorical taxonomies around it that's driven by the use case that we're hoping for them to achieve. Same side on destinations. For us, because the pain of downloading CSVs or having to pick up from an S3 share or using Athena was immense, we knew which ones we needed to support quickly for our customers. And I think we're probably going to be pretty busy releasing new destinations for the foreseeable future. And so, my hope is that like some sort of critical mass type thing works itself out and 80-20 rules save the day. But like, I think when people think about what our product's doing for them, they want that data in and back in all of their core systems. And these systems vary in complexity depending on where it needs to go. And so, I don't know if that helps answer that question. But yeah, that's kind of how we're thinking about it. And I wish we could have 10 already, but at the same time, it's been 3 weeks. I'm just glad we have 3.
What does it take to launch another one?
Yeah, for us right now, it looks like it's an average of maybe 6 to 8 hours of dev work. And so we're fitting it in, kind of looking at 2-3 destinations in every respective sprint cycle. But Census was a huge priority to get that embedded. And I'd say the heavy lifting happens up front, right? It's getting familiar with the logs, parsing those for, different functions and workflows that we need in our system. But once it's implemented, going source by source is kind of like chopping wood. You could stay out all day doing it. And by the time you're done, you might look back and there's a huge pile behind you. And those are all these new destinations that we can support. But I would be, if I was, thinking about some of the stuff that I would have done differently when first implementing Powered by Fivetran, a lot of it is restricting to get to really tight use cases and understanding the workflow of like what they are doing, like step by step, like meticulously. And I think it actually makes it easier because offering too much functionality too early can really hurt on the feature creep that comes from all sorts of questions and edge cases.
I'm curious, what has been, I mean, to the level that you're comfortable sharing, what has been adoption been like? And did you notice any, I mean, maybe that's kind of broadly across both the census side, the export side, and the import side. And you notice any appreciable changes when you started taking this philosophy of kind of almost like avoiding the paradox of choice?
Yeah, it works better. That's my blanket statement. It works better for us, but that's our persona, right? I can't say that for if someone was building, maybe some sort of financial modeling software, and they were bringing in things like QuickBooks and Xero and all that. I am probably 100% confident that you need to offer the full gambit of selection capability and everything surrounding that. I'd say like the litmus test is just if you think about the source that you want someone to onboard or push to, how much customization in application does that source offer? And then subsequently, what do you think the variability is going to be if you're serving a multitude of different industries, so more horizontally, or if it's like really deep vertical? And so for us, we're very marketing and advertising use case driven. Those are the people that use our product. Restriction is better. Automation is more appreciated. Automation and simplicity is more appreciated. But yeah, if that answers the original intent of that question. And in terms of adoption, I think it's been maybe a week and a half, and more than half our customer base is using one or the other, Google Sheets or Klaviyo. So yeah, it went out of the gate. Also had 5 prospects in trial that really needed to see that from us. So we're hopeful to get them over the finish line, just in part because we solved this problem for them.
That's really excellent to hear that we can, help add value to those customers. There's one question from the audience that I will get to in a second, but I guess like while we're on this theme of the customer usage, what has the qualitative feedback been around the use of this data?
Yeah, I think so. If I kind of bucketed our directs versus the digital agencies, I'd say that the agencies are excited for more destinations that simplify their life. Google Sheets right now is a stepping stone, right? Because we've now given them maybe a system, if you will, that they're more comfortable moving data to and from to other places. They could do that with our Athena warehouse that we offer them, but at the same time, that's not for everybody. And so Google Sheets is leveraged to get to destinations for direct syncs to Facebook custom audiences, Trade Desk, all sorts of different DSPs. So I would say that qualitatively, people are pumped that they now can do this. For our Klaviyo users, the fact that they don't have to touch anything kind of blows their mind, and they're excited about that. That is a huge improvement. They've always been able to onboard Klaviyo, Shopify, etc., and enrich, but they've never been able to send it back into Klaviyo. And so that's a big deal for us, and a lot of people are really pumped about that.
Yeah, thanks for kind of explaining that in detail. One question from the audience I'm going to pull up is about the stuff that happens in between. You get data, and then you have to do a bunch of stuff to turn it into the data sets that you actually want to send out to a Google Sheet or a Klaviyo. I'm going to pull this up from Lewis. How do you deal with duplicate data or unclean data, especially maybe this concept of entity resolution, kind of taking data from multiple sources?
Yeah, so for us, Untitled, we built our own identity graph. And subsequently, for myself, my co-founders, this is our background. So we all came from company previously that did this for the device and IP side of things. So really, this is a benefit that I think when we talk about the composable CDP category, that's where the heaviest lifting is for tools that are fully composable, great functionality in sections of the CDP off the shelf, but at the same time, the user has to know what they're doing there, and there's a lot of work to do there. For us, we wanted to simplify that. The only way we can simplify it is by relying on traditional primary key identifiers that come out of the SaaS products, but then having a basis of identity resolution as a service in our system that uses second and third party data sets to enrich. And so I would say if someone was trying to do this workflow that we're offering end to end, one time manually, using traditional MDS tools, that could take a while. This happens programmatically with pretty UI widgets, and they never have to even think about it. And then on the destination side in particular, it depends on which census operations that you want to roll with. Every destination has some presets. Some are more restricted than others. But I think you need to know what that workflow is to pick the right operation. And so for Klaviyo in particular, that's like the lifeblood system of record for people's prospecting if you're an e-com. So we needed to make sure that our upserting or addition operation was really tight. And this is why we actually need to allow people to onboard Klaviyo through the Powered by Fivetran connector, because by doing so, we can run all of those enrich, dedupe, clean operations. And then whatever lists that they're loading from our audience section are already tidied and aren't going to mess up the data on the other side.
So I was curious, Aaron, is it like a bunker? Is Aaron's background real?
Yeah, Aaron's background is real. It is restoration Barnwood. The building that Untitled's office is in is called Butchertown Market. Really, really cool space. I can't remember what they used to make here, but there are beams in here that are as old as the United States, and some just amazing juxtapositions of very like modern architecture against these kind of old fundamental, barnwood, stuff like that. And so, yes, that's real. And I have a lofted ceiling that is probably 16 to 17 feet high. So yeah, it's a cool space to work in.
We have another question from the audience, from Lewis, which is around lookalike audiences and creating them.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I think the standard lookalike audience is kind of hokey, meaning that it relies on primarily demographic attributes, of which could be a loaded topic depending on where that data is coming from. So lookalike audiences for us, both a combination of behavioral and intent data, actual demographic data, as well as transactional data. So we're looking at a few different things involved. And I don't think it's as simple as what's attribute density look like for this list. And like, I'm talking about household income, geography, et cetera, and then trying to match that in a different data set. I think there's a lot more science to it depending on where the customer is. So we have to use a few different modeling techniques, as well as different types of data that we have access to or acquired over time to pull that off in a way where it actually works really well. And this is actually somewhat what I'm driving at when I talk about advertising channels being somewhat of a black box. If you upload a list, you're automatically going to lose maybe half the records in that process, just because you don't have the IDs to append into, say, the audience platforms that advertising channel, their data sets are compiled through. And then subsequently, when you use their lookalike audience feature, there's no way for you to actually validate that in their identity system. Because like I get told I have a lookalike audience, but I don't really know if I do, or what the leverages or attribute density that they're going to prioritize in a lookalike. We surface all of that within Distilled. And so people have not only the visibility of it, but they know what the lookalike audience is cruxed against. And they can verify for themselves if they think that's the most compelling thing. We're generating it automatically based upon what our AI systems see. Lewis has some good questions. Keep them coming, Lewis.
I think I'm curious. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this. We talked a little bit about this throughout the presentation, but when it comes to integrating with other systems, whether that's import or export, or even kind of one level higher than that, what it means. What are you most excited for in coming down the pipe, Aaron? And this I'll also send this to Jimmy and Will.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. We always the part of the way we measure our product roadmap and how much we need to eat through is we actually categorize it. I'm not joking, but inputs, outputs, and do stuff with data, right? And so I don't like that it's all perfectly balanced, like in a pie chart right now. Because what that means is that we don't have the density of features or supported sources in all three. What I'd love to see is Untitled has blazed so much of a trail on all the do stuff with data things that it's just inputs and outputs. And we can measure the quality and effectiveness our product has in our users' hands because we've enabled them to do so much with data that they just want to put more data in our system or find more places for it to go. And so that's how we look at it. I think for me, it's paying down the backlog of both sources and destinations. And I think I'm very excited to see what our platform looks like at the end of the year, because it's been a long time coming for us. And we know to a large extent what people need or want Distilled to do, given a couple years building these solutions custom in the service side. And so I just feel like we're always a little bit behind or a lot of bit behind because we have so much that we want to build and enable our customers with. But we're excited about that.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. Anything from your side, Will?
Yeah. When we started Census Embedded, people literally said like, "Hey, can I have a white label version of Census?" Right? Like that's what they said. And we said no for a long time because we're like, we need to focus on like our core product, like, make sure we understand what reverse ETL is. And then when we started to say yes, I thought that it was going to be very much like a developer-facing product that that people were going to use to like embed pipelines in the product. And what has happened is people really want all the power of Census. And so what's coming down the pipe, if you will, is like the ability to put more of what Census offers directly inside your product. We have a pretty sophisticated like sync editor experience that people have to rebuild. And so often people just don't bother and they go with the simplest thing. So that'll be really easy to embed. And then the other thing that's maybe even more exciting is audience management, right? So a lot of our customers use Census for not only reverse ETL, but also to explore their profiles, right? And figure, okay, who is in my market? What kind of audiences should I create? And like, obviously Aaron is talking about like programmatic audience, like generation. But if people aren't there and they're just like, I don't know, I want to like create an email to like blast a bunch of people in Georgia that are interested in dogs. they can do that with Census through like Audience Builder. And unsurprisingly, people want that ability in their product, and that's something we're going to enable as well.
And Jimmy, any parting words on the future state of data integration?
Yeah, the one of the things that we've seen over time, initially we built webhooks because people were pulling our API like crazy to understand if there was new data that had landed, right? But pulling scales in a non-linear way. And at a certain point, you really have to kind of figure out a solution to that, which is usually webhooks. So webhooks have been really successful for us, but you go through this process where you release the first version of something, and then people are like, that's great, now I want more, right? So a couple of things that we're looking at, we have a bunch of log events, and we kind of are looking at our log events holistically and figuring out, okay, are there ways that we can kind of combine these better and make them into useful webhooks for customers that allow them to trigger more granular downstream processes. So again, right now we have, a few of these, the big ones being, hey, a sync has, completed, go do whatever you need to do downstream of that sync. But there are customers that are like, well, I actually really only want to trigger this downstream process if like these particular tables have updated. So if you can just, like include that data inside of the webhook, then that's going to make my life better. Or I only want to trigger if records have modified at all. So tell me how many records have modified so that I can make some sort of like decision on updating a downstream process. So keep an eye out. We're investing in those areas, and we're going to make it so that webhooks are much more granular going forward.
Amazing. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Jimmy, for your time today, walking through embedded integrations and what you can do with them. Thanks, everybody who attended and for the great questions. This will be available as a recording as well. So I forget whether this just gets auto sent to you or if you'll be able to find it online. But it will be available shortly. And thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.